All right, thank you so much again for joining us today. Wake County Commissioner Matt Calabria is with us, and we are very fortunate to have him here. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. And we'll get right into it. The average household income in Wake County is around $88,000, nearly $20,000 above the national average. But still, it makes it difficult sometimes in this area to afford a house, especially in this market. What is your focus on making housing more affordable so that working class families can call Wake County home for not just now, but for years to come?
Well, thank you for having me. And you're right to focus on these housing issues. Our surveys tell us, and our anecdotal evidence tells us, that this is number one in people's minds. It's just a cost of living, housing affordability issues. And that's a national issue right now. I've been talking with commissioners all across the country, and this is really the most acute pain point for everyone. But we are growing in Wake County. We have a particularly acute problem here. There's no doubt about it. We've been trying to really do everything that we can to address this issue. One of the big things is working with our municipal partners to look at planning and zoning. It's not always the most attractive issue. A lot of people think about building new affordable housing, and that's essential and important. But by making sure that we've got the planning and the zoning right so that we can have density in the right places, we can have vibrant downtowns, vibrant centers in each of our towns, that goes a long way. I know there's a big conversation about missing middle housing, townhouses and duplexes and triplexes, ADUs, accessory dwelling units. All of those things help. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things that I've learned is that so much of this is really just supply and demand. And so you can provide all sorts of government correctives, but government's not going to build our way out of an affordable housing crisis. But if we do set the structures right, and we create a landscape and kind of set up the rules of the road in such a way that we can better address housing affordability by having more affordable housing being built, our realtors, our home builders, and so many others tell us that that works and that they're certainly in favor of that in this area. It would, of course, benefit our citizenry in general. The other thing I would say is, we always try to keep our taxes as low as we possibly can, while still adequately supporting our public schools and other important government services. Most people don't know that Wake County has a lower tax rate than most counties in the state. And we try to always be as effective and efficient as we can be in terms of the services we provide. And then the last thing I'll say is a lot of this is not just about housing, it's also about cost of living. So by focusing on good public transportation, trying to keep costs for other things low, we're trying to hit it at all angles, in addition to providing government-supported affordable housing and those sorts of things as well.
Yeah, that's all great. And I think you mentioned a lot of great initiatives there and things that, especially the taxes. I think that's one of the things that does fly under the radar in terms of the tax rate for this county. Follow up, you might have answered this already a little bit, but what is your message to, let's say, the couple who are an elementary school teacher and a public works employee who are making, that $80,000 a year, each bringing in a $40,000 a year salary? Is Wake County still the place for them as we see, like we mentioned, housing continue to go up and even the average household income continue to increase, but maybe not for all families?
Yeah, there's no doubt that for a lot of working families, it's tough right now. We know that that's a national problem. And one thing I would say just for perspective is compared to most major metropolitan areas in the country of our size and caliber, we're actually doing better. And we hear that from employers who are looking to create jobs here. We hear that from people who are looking to move here. So is it more expensive to live in Wake County than Pasquotank County? Yeah, absolutely. Is it more expensive to live in Wake County than a lot of our competitor counties in Austin, Texas, or San Francisco or New York? Well, thankfully we're doing better, but that perspective helps, but it doesn't get families out of the woods. What I would say is we are doing our best to continue to chip away at the affordable housing crisis. I've done a number of trips to other counties looking at their issues and their affordable housing issues and education issues and transportation issues. you can find plenty of elected officials who will get up and they'll say, we have a great public education system, we have a great public transportation system. Nobody ever stands up and says, I fixed affordable housing.
Right.
It's one of the most difficult issues to really to address. But we are chipping away at it. We are trying to provide a diverse housing stock. We know that there's a scarcity, but what I will say is we're also trying to build out our public transportation system, because the second biggest cost for people is transportation, owning a car and all of that. And also, you can't beat our amenities, right? So if it's the hypothetical couple you mentioned, if they want to start a family and they want to know that they don't have to send their kid to private school or whatever it may be, they'll know they have a very strong public education system that's world-class, and that's adequately supported. And we've got great libraries, great, free art museum, and so many other museums and amenities. And so in terms of quality of life, needing to go somewhere else to get the great experiences is just not something that you have to do here, because they're all right here. So, we need to continue to work on housing affordability, and it is tough, but I think that by and large, our elected officials are committed to doing what we can, because just about every mayor I talk to and all of my colleagues on the county commission know that this is an issue that we have to keep chipping away at. So, we've got some things going for us, some headwinds as well, but hold on, we're coming.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think it's important too to highlight, I'm not from North Carolina originally. I'm from New York, and people are going to continue to move here for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. And another great thing is the unemployment rate here seems to be lower than a lot of places. If you want a job, that Wake County in particular is a place you can come and get a job. So I think that's great. You mentioned a couple of things, public transportation and sort of this issue on the national level. So I want to go in both of those directions, but we'll start with public transportation. In terms of public transportation, what is your take on the growth and development of, let's say, the commuter rail or a public bus system or other possibilities of mass transit that could positively impact Wake County and the surrounding areas moving forward?
It's a great question, and it really is one of our biggest issues. The thing about everything in transportation world is that everything costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time to set it up. And so, when you talk to a transportation planner, 10 years is just a blink for them, because of just the size and the scale of what it takes to put things online. In 2016, many will know that we passed the Wake County Public Transit Plan, and that called for more than tripling bus service, building out what are called bus rapid transit, BRT lines, which are sort of enhanced bus service, often with dedicated lanes and some other signal priority so that buses can get through traffic lights, as well as commuter rail service. And we're working on all three of those. Now, the other thing everybody will know is that the pandemic kind of threw everything for a loop. And so we have made sure that we're taking our time to do it right. We're saving the taxpayer money so that we'll have enough to pay for infrastructure improvements. But we've made tremendous headway on the bus service. Mm-hmm. And now you'll see some bus service in every town. There wasn't that before. And the bus service is only going to get better over time. So there's sort of a chicken and egg issue here, because a lot of people will say, okay, well, we want to improve ridership, but the way you improve ridership is by increasing frequency, right? If a bus only comes once an hour, people are not going to ride it as much as if it came every 10 minutes. Right. And so we've got to be thoughtful about where the demand is. But not only have we already been working to robustly build out our bus service, we are now opening our BRT lines and continuing to build those out. And we're working with the federal government actually very actively to try to lasso federal dollars to support commuter rail. There are actually, when we passed the transit plan in 2016, we had one rail corridor in mind, a sort of east-west line that would run more or less from Garner into RTP and ultimately connect with Durham. But there's another line referred to as the S line that runs more or less north-south from Wake Forest down into Apex. And there's a lot of interest in that. There's a lot of potential state funding for that. So we're doing it slowly and cautiously and very responsibly from a cost perspective. And we're also adapting to changing federal priorities for money and that sort of thing. But I think we've done a pretty good job under the circumstances. Bus will continue to expand rapidly. Commuter rail will take a little bit longer, but I think we're going to have a good product and probably more effectively and cost efficiently than we even anticipated.
That's great to hear. I think those sort of things is what's going to continue to make Wake County even more attractive for people to come and live. You mentioned earlier middle housing. I went to the Raleigh City Council meeting back in April, I believe, and spoke in support of middle housing in Raleigh on behalf of RRAR, our association. So in addition to affordability, that inventory for available housing, clearly an issue. What is your stance on creating more options for people to own a home in Wake County? You know, whether it be single family homes, we sort of touched on that, so let's put that aside. But what about condominiums, middle housing, those sort of things? Where do you fall with that? Is that a good idea for Wake County?
Absolutely. You know, I was talking to a home builder in Wake Forest at one point, and they said, as a general rule of thumb, the price of land, a piece of land that a builder will buy to build a house on, needs to be about 20% of the ultimate sale price of the house plus the land. Mm-hmm. So she said, look, you know, if you have lots that go for $500,000 just for the lot, I can't then put a house on it and sell it for $350,000, which isn't even, you know, that's not even a working class house for a lot of people. That's sort of a middle class home. Sure. And what that really highlighted to me is, look, you know, we set the stage for all of this to occur. And what we have heard from home builders and realtors and the Triangle Apartment Association and so many others is, if you give us the opportunity, we will absolutely rise to that opportunity, but we need to have that opportunity. Now, of course, I can't vouch for every individual decision that a municipality may make about, you know, was it appropriate to put townhomes exactly in this spot or that sort of thing. And we try to stay out of each other's business on the granular level. But what I will say is, when you zoom out and you say to mayors or elected officials, look, we've got an affordable housing problem, right? Right. Yeah. Okay, this is our toolkit. What are we going to do? What are you going to do to do your share? What are you going to do to your share for your share? What can I do for my share? And then when you start thinking globally and realize, well, it's got to go somewhere. You know, it's a lot easier to kind of find the right way. But ultimately, single family homes are going to be part of the option, you know, part of the toolkit. But we've got to look at condominiums, missing middle housing, apartments. You know, the number of renters is probably going to grow just as the number of homeowners. And so I think we need all of the above. Now we need to do it in a conscientious way. But this is a supply and demand game. And what I would offer to people is, you know, so many people think that that kind of housing is concerning because it changes things. But what we're finding in our national experience is that having housing diversity is important because it helps you preserve the good things about your community, right? Like, you want somebody who works in Wake County to live here too. You want to have a place that your kids can come back and live. And you want to have you want to continue to have diversity. You want to continue to have walkability, and you want to enhance your walkability. And so by having a diversity of affordable housing stock, we address the supply and demand. And we can make it better for everyone. The last thing I'll say is, if you had a shortage of cars, the answer would not be to build more Rolls Royces, right? You need a diversity of you know, cars on the market, because people are going to be entering at different price points. And so the same is true with affordable housing. If we've got people all across the income spectrum, all across the economic spectrum who are looking for houses, this notion that the only thing we're going to produce is the most expensive permutation of what we can provide, doesn't make any sense. So we've got to, if we're going, we've got to take a cue from the private sector and realize that we've got to respond to the demand out there, and that the private sector will in fact do that, give them the opportunity. So we've just got to be thoughtful about our decisions, and then and facilitate how we can.
Yeah, I think that's all true. Just a quick follow-up that I've heard from other elected officials. I just had a conversation with a Raleigh City Council member, and they mentioned the idea of taking some of these old office buildings or abandoned buildings and potentially turning those into livable housing units. Is that something else that you think should be considered for Wake County because of the need for more housing?
At this point, I think everything's on the table. We have finite housing dollars when it comes to government supported housing. And so you start to think about questions like, is it, let's say I have $1 million. Can I produce more units by building them from scratch, or building on another site, or trying to run plumbing and, what otherwise would be an office building to upfit that? So a lot of these decisions are comparative. We're picking amongst a number of good ideas, and that's where our staff comes in, and where we ultimately defer to them as to how to maximize our resources. But I think those suggestions are coming from a place that's exactly right, which is, land is scarce. I mean, on one hand, we've had the same amount of land as we've always had, but the reality is the land, as much as the money, is the limiting factor when it comes to our ability to create new affordable housing. So I think we absolutely need to be looking thoroughly into creative options, because we're in a situation where we've got to have a full court press right now.
That's great to hear. I wanted to touch briefly on this. In 2022, you were appointed to a task force with county commissioners from around the country, focusing on this issue, on affordable housing. We sort of touched already that this is a national issue. So I wanted to pivot and ask you, what has your experience on that task force been like? And because these issues are impacting the entire country, have there been some ideas that you've heard that you've said, oh yeah, that's a great idea that maybe we should implement in Wake County?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I will say is, on a personal, elected official level, getting to commiserate with 30 of some of the smartest minds among elected officials in the country on these issues has been very gratifying and a wonderful learning experience for me. We've had, people in this group come from Juneau, Alaska, to Florida, to you name it. So it's really everywhere. And we've been getting together periodically to really set an agenda for national lobbying, for suggestions about a toolkit that we can push out to our county, thousands of county commission colleagues throughout the country. And I've been honored to be North Carolina's representative on that. There have been a great number of ideas that we've floated. So again, some of it has to do with federal funding. Some of it has to do with how we might solicit the state to assist. On the local level, I can tell you, across the political spectrum, and we've talked with experts across the political spectrum, and we keep coming back to a model where you try to get the supply and demand right, and then you provide a safety net, basically. So we know that the market won't necessarily support permanent supportive housing for those who have complicating factors, behavioral health issues, substance use issues, other things that can really, frankly, make homelessness stick and prevent people from bouncing out of, back out into stable home environments. So by getting that planning and zoning right, by getting density right, and then having that safety net where necessary, that is the core of it. Now, a lot of the other stuff is going to be based on what your problems are. So, for example, a lot of people don't have scarce land; they just have blight, and there are ways to address that. But there are a great many opportunities for public-private partnerships, for finding innovative ways to make dense housing attractive. for better utilizing the resources that you have. And that could be through remodeling offices. It could be also through things like making it cheaper to build cheap housing, not cheap in the negative sense, but economical housing. And so the data tells us, and I felt like I was appropriately, I asked the skeptical questions just to make sure, but the data tells us that if we remove a lot of fee barriers and that sort of thing to the construction of affordable housing, that does in fact make them cheaper. Creating a fast lane for affordable housing projects so that because time is money, so that they can move through the pipeline for permitting purposes more quickly is helpful. And also, we've even discussed things like having pre-approved ADU plans, right? So you don't have to go through the approval process. If you build an ADU and it has this floor plan, then it's just a matter of days rather than maybe a matter of weeks or something like that. So those are really the three buckets. It's supply and demand, providing that safety net, and then looking at ways to remove transactional barriers reasonably so, are really where I think a lot of folks are coalescing.
You mentioned homelessness briefly, and I appreciate the work you are doing to reduce homelessness for veterans in Wake County. I think that's super admirable. Can you detail for us that project a little bit and the importance of providing quality shelter for veterans? And expanding on that, why is it important for citizens of Wake County to have that opportunity to have a place and shelter of their own?
Absolutely. Well, and I'll start with that last part. The fact is, we owe a special debt of gratitude to people who have served our country in the armed forces. And we know that a lot of times they come back and they are dealing with challenges that most of us don't have to face. And so it's incumbent on us. I think we have a moral obligation to make sure that we look out for those who have looked out for us. And so as a result, not only are there local programs, but we're trying our best to utilize federal programs. There are federal veteran housing vouchers that we are trying to maximize. But a lot of this is just making it a priority and making veterans a priority when we are housing folks. So we have articulated a goal of basically eliminating veteran homelessness, and we are very close to doing that. There will always be frictional homelessness, just like there's what you might call frictional unemployment. You never get to 0.0% unemployment. But what you want to do, especially for the veteran population, is you want to make any homelessness that you want to try to prevent as much homelessness as you can by preventing people from, by helping people with rental assistance and other things. But you also want to make sure that people bounce out of homelessness very quickly and into housing that is stable and high quality and appropriate. And part of it is just making it a priority. And we have been doing a very good job of helping develop programs that work with landlords and say, okay, listen, what can we do to help this person stay in their home? Because when a veteran or really anybody leaves, then things get so much harder. And so by providing rental assistance funds, we've got some national award-winning rental assistance and landlord interaction programs. So we try to really focus on helping veterans stay in their homes, but also prioritize our resources in a way that helps them get into supportive housing, if necessary, get into housing as quickly as we can. The last thing I'll say is we are not only just trying to utilize federal dollars for housing, but we are trying to do the best that we can to help veterans access the plethora of federal and state benefits that are available to them. Just like, I don't know everything that I might qualify for in life, or discounts or whatever it may be. None of us does. But we've actually in this budget begun to build out our veteran services apparatus beyond what we've had so far, because we want veterans to know that they have somebody to call and say, what health benefits can I get? What employment services do I have access to? And so by putting the whole person back together and building this ecosystem of support around each veteran, we're better able to avoid homelessness. We're better able to address homelessness when it does occur.
That's awesome and great to hear. And I know I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure a lot of Wake County residents appreciate that as well. I have a ton of questions for you. I could probably talk to you for a couple hours, so we might have to do a part two. But finally, I'll ask you this. What is your hope for Wake County, and how do you see the county looking, changing and developing in the next 5 to 10 years for you and for your family and for the rest of Wake County?
Maybe I've drank the Kool-Aid, but I really think that Wake County is one of the best places to live in the country. And we see that all the time in the feedback that we get from people who are moving here, from people who enjoy the amenities, from the businesses we seek to recruit. You know, the number one thing that businesses are looking for is access to talent. Being a low cost place to live or, you know, build a business certainly helps. That is an absolutely material concern. But the number one thing that they say is that we need access to talent. And what that means is a strong educational system, a strong Wake Tech, but also the kind of place that people want to live. It means great libraries. It means great parks. It means a vibrant economy and social sector and active downtowns. And so I think it's ours to mess up. And I hope we do everything that we can not to. And part of that special sauce will be to continue to have stakeholders like the realtors, like active churches and nonprofits and others, really all coming together and being communicative. People don't realize how unusual that is. When you go to most other major metropolitan areas, there are factions that are often at each other's throats. We just don't have that here. Everybody talks to each other, doesn't mean they agree all the time. But stakeholders really do get along in a way and are collegial and collaborative in a way that is very, very rare. And so I hope in terms of process that we keep that. But what I'm looking to see is that we continue to have a strong educational system from cradle to career to make sure that we, as we grow, that we not just maintain our quality of life, but improve our quality of life, connect our various greenways so that we have a comprehensive greenway system, make sure we have vibrant amenities like Marbles Kids Museum and the Science Museum and others. But then finally, of course, address our affordable housing issue. I think, and I've said this in a number of crowds, but I want Wake County to be the first county that really can stand up and say, look, we've gone, most of the way or all the way to solving affordable housing. I mean, I almost have some trepidation saying that out loud, even in the hypothetical. But I think we can do it. I think if we really, the part of the difficulty is that it requires a lot of forethought. It requires a lot of years, and it requires a lot of coordination among stakeholders. But if anybody can do it, we can do it. And the key is providing housing opportunities that fit you, fit me, fit somebody off the street, fit a working class family, and fit somebody who just graduated from college and someone who just retired. And so by having that ecosystem where everyone has an opportunity to find housing that works for them, that's how we cut that Gordian knot. But it's going to take a lot of work, and for some people it may be our life's work, just trying to deal with issues like that. But I do think that we can continue to grow and improve quality of life at the same time, and that's what I'm hoping that we can do.
That sounds great to me. I for one want to thank you for your time today. I know you're very busy. Giving me a half hour to talk with you through these issues means a lot, and the realtors will certainly appreciate that. So again, thank you for being with us, and anything we can do to help you and help the rest of Wake County in terms of this housing crisis or these housing issues, should we say, we'd be more than happy to collaborate on that. So again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and y'all know where to find me.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.